Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. So as you see guys, I'm here doing something different. So I'm not doing a video game. Today's Friday, so finally the week is over. I can relax a bit. So that's why I've decided to do a video about this subject that in my past video about the channel update I first introduced, and now I want to start developing it and start doing videos about this. And it's gonna be about doubts, questions, and arguments against Christianity or pro-Christianity, and how to deal with them, and how, you know, my experience and some other people experience that have written books like philosophers and all that stuff has helped me going through this kind of you know, arguments, and trying to figure out the real meaning right behind. So I hope you guys can enjoy this new part of the channel. And but first of all, I want to just warn everyone that is gonna be seeing these videos and is gonna want to comment about something I say or about something I talk about, that I'm not gonna allow any negative comment that is not useful for anyone to learn about. So if you don't agree with someone I say, you can say it politely. You can just don't comment at all, you know, but any comment that is gonna be harsh or it's gonna be with offensive language, I'm gonna just remove it right away. So yeah, for all of you that for all of the YouTubers, actually the viewers that are prone to doing this kind of stuff, I'm just gonna warn you, okay, about that. And then second thing, everything that I'm gonna be saying is gonna be not based on my work, but on other experts' work. And namely, I'm gonna just name Dr. Frank Turek. Is a co-founder of crossexamined.org. Then I'm gonna base also some of the claims and stuff I'm gonna discuss in this kind of videos about J. Warner Wallace. He's a detective, a cold case detective, and he has written 3 books, and I have 2 of them. And yeah, so sometimes I'm gonna also quote him, and then other works of other philosophers or scientists or you know, philosophers. Then are gonna be C.S. Lewis, William Craig, and then a bunch of other ones that I can't remember right away. So yeah, hope you guys can enjoy this. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What are the common and the most common objections against not Christianity, but like philosophy in itself? When you approach someone, you know, and you are gonna start making arguments against using, for example, objective truth or objective morality or objective something, then first of all the other person has to understand what an objective or absolute argument is. And then, for example, about truth, what is an absolute or objective truth, and so on. So I'm gonna start making some definitions here. I'm gonna apologize for my English because it's not my native language, so I struggle a bit thinking about words and how to express the different kind of things that I'm gonna be saying. So just forgive me about that. So let's start, for example, with truth, you know, objective truth. So an objective truth is something that, as the name says, is objectively true. So it doesn't depend on anything or anyone opinion point of view or feeling or whatever other thing. Okay, it doesn't depend on that, but it's objective. So it's always like that. It doesn't matter who you are or from which era you are or from which I don't know, country with different laws you are. There are some objectives, values, objective truth or objective morality that is the base for like the human behavior and the human society. And just I'm gonna make an example like in the book from C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. So imagine, for example, a man marrying a woman. Okay, so yeah, of course we have different cultures. So for example, in some cultures you can marry only one woman, for example in the Western. But then in some Asian or Arabic cultures you can marry more than one woman. Okay, so the objective truth behind, for example, marrying women is that the relative truth, okay, the thing that changes is the thing I've said. So for example, in some cultures you can marry only one woman, in some other countries you can marry 4 or 10 or 100 or whatever you want. But the common rule of all cultures is that you can't have all the women that you want or the women that you want. Okay, yeah, I'm saying women's that's just bad. So can you understand the logic behind? Okay, so yeah, we differ in cultures about how many women you can marry, you can have in this case, you know, marry. But all men in all the eras have agreed some kind of interior mental agreement. You know, it's not something that you say to another guy. It's something that you have already inside of you, you know, that you can't have all the women that you want. You can't walk on the street, and even if you live, for example, in a country that you can marry a lot of women, you can't just walk in the country and say, oh, I want that woman, or I want that one, or that one, or that one, you know. So the differences in morality in this case, yeah, of course, superficially the morality differs in cultures and different eras, but at the bottom all the moralities are the same. So men can have all the women that they want. And so for example, in this case, the absolute truth, okay, so the objective truth is that men can't have or can't marry all the women that they want. So in this case, this concept doesn't change on country or doesn't change on eras or with different cultures. Okay, it always stay the same. So that's just an example of objective truth. Okay, but imagine you're meeting someone that says, well, but you know, I think we can never know truth. Truth does not exist. Okay, or there is no true morality, or truth is just an illusion. Okay, so how can you reply to that? Well, it's very simple in one way, but also you have to be aware of this technique that consists of taking the words from the other person, the statement that that person is saying, and trying to apply that statement to itself. Okay? In this case, for example, if someone says there is no truth, truth does not exist, then you can ask him, is that true? So is that statement, is your saying there is no truth a truth claim? And you can already tell that is self-refuting. So if you're saying there is no truth, your claim about saying there is no truth can't be true, because there is no truth. Okay, so it's self-defeating. The statement does not resist when it's applied to itself. And you can use this technique for like almost every objection or every kind of denial of truth or knowledge or morality or whatever. So for example, if someone says, well, you know, yeah, there is, probably exists, some truth, some absolute truth exists, but we can't know that. Okay, then you can ask him, well, how do you know we can't know that truth? Okay, and in this case, for example, if the statement says that we can't know truth, then how do you know that we can't know truth? And so on. So for example, if someone says truth is relative, then you ask him, are you absolutely sure? Because your statement is an absolute claim. Like I said before, it's an absolute, a universal claim, a statement that applies to everything. So if you're saying there is truth is relative, then that claim that is an absolute claim falls to itself. It's self-refuting. Okay, and yeah, you know, all the common I don't remember also other common objections. Oh yeah, another one is, well, that's true for me, but it's not true for you, or maybe it's true for you but not true for me. And you can ask him, but is that true for anyone? So for anybody? So the fact that it's true for you and not for me, or for me and not for you, and you say, and you can see already that this statement is falling. Okay, it's self-refuting. So yeah, so this is one little trick that you can use when you're talking to someone, especially the skeptics. You know, they're skeptics about anything. They doubt anything, but the only thing they don't doubt is that they have to doubt. So that's why it's very useful to make these kind of questions, remarking their statement, and in this case you can make them, or the person that is saying these things, make them realize that what they're saying is refuting the statement itself. So yeah, and I think those are the basics. You know, when you approach anyone and you want to discuss about anything in philosophy, you have to really have solid grounds to start your communication and your exchange of opinions. So yeah, that's one cool thing. And after you have done that, so after you have made sure that the other person acknowledge that there is an objective truth, there are some objective values, there is an objective morality out there, and then you can start talking about other things. So for example, in this case, I'm going to discuss some of the critical questions about Christianity. For example, first of Christianity is like the existence of God. You know, how can we know that God exists? Or has science proved that God exists, or that God doesn't exist? And you know, nowadays culture, people rely a lot on science, okay? But the claim or this thinking or the statement that says only science yields the truth itself is not a scientific claim, because you can't go in a lab and you can't prove that this statement, or you can't prove that only science can have the truth. You know, that's a philosophical claim. So you know, science has given mankind a lot of really good things, and with technology, you know, with all this medicine and so on, that's really helpful. But science, just as C.S. Lewis said in this book, should limit itself to those kind of stuff, you know. So stuff we can just sense with our senses. We can measure things that we can reproduce in the lab. That is the basic of the scientific method. So seeing a phenomenon, observing a phenomenon, then going to the lab, writing a kind of theory about that event, and then trying to reproduce it in the lab. When you can do that, then you have completely followed the scientific method, and therefore you have established, for example, a theory, like for example theory of gravitation, you know, or gravity. So it's something that it doesn't matter how many times you can test it, whatever, you know, you can apply the formula to whatever weight in whatever part of the world, and the weight is gonna always behave in the way that the formula, the theory explains. Okay. But when we come close to arguments that are metaphysical, so that are starting to be not anymore physical, so something that we can measure and we can reproduce, but something that is beyond that, then in this case science can't help at all. You know, we can call in cause philosophy, we can call in cause metaphysical science, okay, but not the science that's like you go in the lab and you go and you try to reproduce something. Okay, so when someone says, well, you know, God has shown that there is no God, that is just not a scientific claim, because that is a philosophical claim. Because science, of course, can't do either. So science can't prove there is a God, like science can't prove there is not a God. So so yeah, I was talking about this kind of question, you know, when you ask someone, well, do you think there is like a super or an eternal being outside the universe, or what do you think about God, or something like that? You know, it's very important when you ask and you start going through these kind of questions to being ready, you know, so you have to be prepared about the different areas of the argument that you're presenting. Therefore, if the person has an objection, you can respond to that objection, and you can clarify that guy's ideas, or you can even, you know, call in cause a scientist or something that scientist has think about, and so on. But it's very important not to, for example, if someone says, well, you know, I don't really believe there is a God, okay, then you start looking, yeah, but you know that there is this and this and this that proves, okay, because that is just the wrong approach. When someone opens, in this case, to you and says, you know, I feel in this way, I don't think there is a God here in this universe, then what you have to do is asking more questions. So asking them, oh, okay, but what do you mean by God? When you're saying here God, what do you mean by that? Or how did you came to this conclusion? Or you know, these kind of questions that so the person that is talking is gonna express itself, and it's gonna be easier for you to understand what he's meaning. Okay, because sometimes this happens a lot for like evolution. When you talk about evolution is such a big argument, well, not argument, such a big subject, okay, that when someone says to you, you know, I think, yeah, science has proved the evolution to be true, you have to ask to that person, what evolution you're talking about, okay, or what do you mean by evolution? Because many times people, for evolution, they mean change over time, and I completely agree with them. Yeah, of course, science has proved that organisms through times they change. Of course, yeah, I agree with that. Or many times also they mean that with evolution. They mean the mutations or the small changes in a DNA that make an organism or a species in this case to survive better in a certain environment. So they're calling natural selection. And then you can say to them, yeah, of course I agree, science has proved that. You know, there are a ton of examples of some kind of species being in a particular environment, and the environment selected as the kind that had the ability to do something instead of the other one that had not that ability. In this case, for example, just one example, the tree moth. So the butterfly, okay, the butterfly, there were two colors of this butterfly, the butterfly that was white and the butterfly that was black. I think they were called pepper moth, okay, the pepper moths. So first the trees were all white, so all the white moths could survive better because they were they were more invisible in the tree than the black ones. So the birds and all the other predators ate the black moths. But what happened after the industrialization? A lot of pollution started coming out of the factories, and that pollution blackened all the trees trunk, you know. So the trees became from white to dark, like gray or some color darker. So in this case, now the darker moths can be invisible, you know, and can be seen less by the predators than the white ones. So now the white ones were eaten and the black ones survived. So if we see the population of the moths, we can see before this industrialization, the black moth population was really low and the white population was really high. And then after the industrialization, they exchanged. So the white population came down and the black population came up. So that is just an example, for example, of evolution. That's evolution. In terms, if you mean of evolution, microevolution, so the fact that this moth had in their DNA the ability to be black or white, and some things from the environment selected that character, okay? And then there is the last thing that people mean by evolution, is the macroevolution. So the fact that during a lot of time, these micro changes, so the microevolution changes through natural selection, in periods of time that are really long, can bring to a totally new species or a totally new kind of animal. Okay, so that's the three meanings you can have for evolution. And of course, science has proved the first one, the second one, but the third one is not proven. It's not proven yet. So there is no scientific proof to conclude that micro changes in the DNA and natural selection in a long period of time can bring to a total different species. Okay, that is just unscientific. Nothing, there is no research that has showed this. So the changes always are micro. So they always, in this case, the animals that are changing, okay, they always stay in the same kind, in the same species. Yeah, they become larger, or they become fatter, or they become more resistant to cold, or less resistant to cold, or to warmer weather, but they don't change. So for example, bears, if they go to live to the Africa, they don't become lions after I don't know, 50 million years. Okay, that is just unscientific. You can't prove that. So it's very important, as you see, asking the person, what do you mean by that? So by the thing that you're saying, what do you mean by that? Or what made you come to that conclusion? Because many times, you know, oh well, I heard my friend that told me about this and I just believed him and I think he's right. Okay, so he hasn't even searched on the internet, he hasn't seen anything that can you know, that can prove that that thing is wrong or is right. So he has not an argument to defend that claim, and many other things. So very important, guys, I'm gonna conclude now this video, to ask questions. So don't always jump to conclusions and to start doing your arguments, but just ask questions so the other person can express itself and you can understand better what he or she means by what she's saying or he's saying. So in this case, you're gonna be narrowing the possibilities, and then you can, when you understand fully what they mean, you can start dialoguing and bringing some kind of evidence. Well, I've seen this. Have you ever considered that this research has shown that? And so the other person, doesn't feel threatened by you, that you're attacking them, you're talking to them. No, you're wrong, I'm right. Something like that. It's very, very bad. And it doesn't make the other person feel well. But instead, making questions, and because people always love to talk, and in this case, that can be better. So, hope you enjoyed this first episode. I've covered some of the basics when you approach apologetics, and in this case, Christian apologetics. So next time, I think I'm gonna start going through some of the arguments for God existence. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and see ya. Bye bye.